Hi all, welcome back. Now let's see how we could use primary key. So by using primary key, we could restrict the data. So primary key is a combination of not null as well as unique. So if you want to create a column or if you want to restrict a column as not null as well as unique, you could go with the primary key. So in the case of unique, you will be able to insert one record as null value. So in the case of unique, you are still able to insert one record as null value. But in the case of primary key, you must insert some value and it should be unique. So once you insert a ID value 1, you won't be able to insert ID that value again. It will violate and it will result in error. Also make sure that or understand inside a table, you could create multiple unique columns. But inside a table, only one primary key is allowed. Because once you create a primary key, by default, the data will be saved in a sorted order. So the data will be sorted or saved in a sorted order of primary key. That's why you can't insert or you can't create a table with multiple primary key. So if you want to assign multiple columns as unique, go with the unique and create one primary key. And there are multiple advantages of creating primary key that we will discuss later part. So the main difference between primary key and unique key is, in the case of unique key, it will allow one column or one row as null value. But in the case of primary key, it won't allow us to insert any null value. And the second main important difference is, one table contains only one primary key, or maximum you could create one primary key. But in the case of unique key, you could create multiple columns as unique. And the third difference is, once you create a primary key, the data will be sorted or saved in a sorted order. So let's create a primary key. So the syntax is, I am going to create a table called table continent with ID as primary key. So let's create a table called table continent and exit. And if you refresh, you could see a new table is created. And once you expand and if you go to the key, you could see one key is there, primary key is there. And if you want to rename or if you want to assign a name, you could use this index. So constraint whichever name you want that you could specify, and you could specify which column you want to consider as a primary key. So in our case, we created a primary key at the time of creation or at the time of defining the column. So let's drop the table and recreate with a name. So now if you refresh the table and if you go to the key, you could see the key value or key name is pkid. Now let's insert some data. And you could see 7 records is inserted. So let's select the data. So if you execute a select statement, you will get 7 records. And if you try to insert the same record again, it will result in error. So let's try to insert, and you could see this is a violation of primary key and you can't insert duplicate record. So once you create a table with primary key, you must insert unique value and that should be not null value. So this is how the primary key is working. Now if you want to drop the primary key, you could use this index. So alter table, specify the table name and specify the key name. So if you execute this statement and you could see, now if you refresh the table, you could see the key is deleted. And if you try to insert this duplicate value, it will insert. So now you will be able to insert the duplicate value, and if you execute the select statement, you could see the records. Now we have duplicate records inside ID. So in order to create a primary key which is already created, so if you want to make any column as primary key and your table is already created, you could use this index. But if you try to execute this statement, it will result in error because the data contain duplicate value. So let's try, and you could see you can't insert or you can't create a primary key for this table because the data is already duplicate. So let's delete the data and try again. So now we deleted all the records, and if you select the statement, you could see there is no record. Now let's add a constraint. So this statement, alter table, table name, add constraint, constraint name, then which column. So we are going to create a constraint based on ID, primary key based on ID. And if you want to add multiple columns, you have an option. You could add comma and specify the column. So the primary key will be a combination of multiple columns. So let's execute this statement. And if you refresh, you could see now we have a new primary key called primary key ID new. So this is how the primary key is working, and primary key will make sure that your column or the column which you define as primary key contain only unique and not null value. So that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.